Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar. This week we are taking a look at the 6th episode of Korra's second season, or second book, The Sting. I'm joined as always by the late airbender, Chris Billingham. I'd say hi. I'd say hi, Chris, but then you do that thing where you go, hi, Chris.
Go on, do it. Do it.
Say hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
It's
fun.
so good. Never
It's
gets
fun
old.
for me, Dan.
Yeah. Also, did you know that Daniel Radcliffe went through 160 pairs of glasses during the Harry Potter movies?
I'm glad we got it out of the way now.
So this is the Sting episode of Korra, which I'm gonna, spoiler alert. I'll do a quick summary in a second, but just spoiler alert, guys. This episode has focus and is therefore significantly better than the last two. As a result, but let's clarify. So this is the Sting. This is the episode in which Mako and Asami sort of go on their little adventure. Mako is kind of the main character of this episode. Korra, obviously, last week having been attacked by that giant spirit monster. Mako is starting to get on the trail of his theory about who really blew up the cultural center or whatever it was from the previous episodes. And ships are being literally hijacked at sea with future industries and various stuff. So they go out in an attempt to try and catch the people doing it and prove whether it is or isn't Northern Water Tribe, as the rest of the police seem to believe. Marco secretly grabs a ship from Varric and a bunch of the shadiest guys, including a guy literally named Shady Shin, who is from the last season, and from the Triple Triads, and they go out to sea. It turns out, though, that was just a way to keep Marco busy because he was too close to the truth. What truth, you ask? Well, what he later discovers is Varric is involved in the stuff happening, or at least his technology is. And then we have a very sinister moment with Varric because it turns out Varric has just bought a controlling share of Future Industries. And meanwhile, Bolin, hot off his weekly cinematic masterpiece, Nuktuk, Hero of the South, is now rich and famous and a creep also, but we'll come to that.
Yes. Yeah. I'm with you, man. I really enjoyed this episode. I had a great time. There were lots of really funny jokes. I made a mental note of some of them and then peek behind the scenes. Dad and I had a chat for about half an hour before recording, so I can't really remember any of the jokes that I'd made a mental note to remember. But there's a lot of funny.
Maybe they'll come to you as we discuss.
Yeah, the guy talking about his beard and saying it's his mustache and saying it's going to go grey and stuff like that was very funny.
Yeah, the
like
guy,
you said,
the guy that has extra toes, he's like Tommy Two Toes or whatever, and then he's like, there's another guy with the exact same thing, but they call him 12 Toes. He gets the 12 Toes name.
And when he's talking to Marco, and Marco's like talking about the statue, and he's like, and it's a hat rack, and Bolin's like, but we don't have any hats. Or the other way around, whichever way around.
Marco says we don't have any hats, and he's like, "That's because we don't have a hat rack." Yeah, it's very good. There is a lot of good jokes in this episode. It's not one of my favorites comedy-wise. It's not an episode I think of when I think of comedy, but they do sneak a lot of in what is otherwise quite a serious episode. They do sneak quite a lot of little subtle gags in, or not even subtle, but just sneaky ones where it's they come and go really quickly because the episode has its plot to get on with and a tone to maintain. So it doesn't ever linger on them, but they are there and they're quite good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Yeah. And just like you say, I thought it had a lot of focus. I thought it, and do you think it's because it's sort of the other plots have seemed unfocused? So because we both really like this episode, and it's hard not to go, well, it didn't have the Avatar in. It didn't have Korra in that much. I know she's in a scene at the end, and that sets up quite an interesting storyline with her. But is it that her storyline is deliberately unfocused? Is it
I don't think so. I think it's the thing we said last week, and the thing we've maintained on a few of these is that there's too much going on. So I think if we'd have removed Mako and Bolin and just focused on Korra, it would have been a good episode. And if we'd have removed, Korra and Mako and Bolin's storylines and focused on Tenzin and his family for a week, That would have been good as well, because it would have felt focused. I think the decision to divide the team across these plots has meant that they all need plots. They all need things to be happening. And I think it's bit off more than it can chew as a season with its ideas and its storylines. Korra's situation, where she was, stuck between her father and her uncle, essentially, as they civil warred over the Southern Water Tribe, is a good plot. And is an interesting story, but it never got the focus it needed for us to really know how Korra felt about it, because we weren't stopping to breathe to get character work around that stuff. We were being told that it was a conflicting thing for her, but we never really got to actually explore it in real terms. So I think all these plots have crowded each other out. It's a clown car. Like, it's too many ideas, too many plots, and they're all crammed in. In a way that is sometimes accidentally comedic, and the show is suffering for it. Like the last 2 episodes, there was just plot, and we were never really getting character, and that's, I think, why. So you take Korra and Tenzin out of the situation, you get Marco for a week, and you can just make it about him and actually explore his feelings on stuff a little bit, as well as. Oh, I don't know if you could hear that, Chris. That was Walt making a big meow. Hello, cat. Would you like to do another big meow?
That was a massive meow. I definitely heard that.
Yeah, that was a very loud meow. Do you want to meow again? Have you got thoughts on Korra? He's looking at me blankly. No, he doesn't have any more thoughts on Korra. Shall I carry on then? Yep, he's left the room. Cool. So yeah, I did wonder for a second while watching this, is this just the lack of Korra? Is it Korra that's not the thing that works about the show? And then I kind of rethought it, because I was thinking a lot, I was thinking specifically about the feedback we've given the episodes we haven't liked, and specifically it was the last 2 that really sort of were the ones where we really noted problems. We enjoyed the first couple, and it feeling overstuffed, so we don't get time to breathe and actually look at how things affect the character is an element. Whereas this week I think we got a bit more of like how Mako feels post his breakup with Korra. We had the stuff with him and Asami. We had the tension of like the Varric reveal at the end. We got Bolin, sort of like his arrogance, or not arrogance, but like his immediate like joy at finding himself rich and famous, which I thought was a fun plot. We actually got to explore it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you're feeling about like. Do you feel like we did get more chance for everything to breathe and for the characters to express their feelings this week? Am I making that up? Is that in my head? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, no, we did, and there were still. Look, the worst example, I think, of serialized story in recent years is Doctor Who Flux, where it felt sometimes that it was like, got to do something with Vinda, we'll chuck a scene in, irrelevant to the rest of the plot of the episode, we'll just have a Vinda scene randomly there. The first episode in particular was awful for that. Just a bunch of scenes on the promise of, well, presumably they'll connect at some point. Bullshit. Bad television. Sorry, just is. And there were 2 moments of this where it felt like, there were 2 serialized scenes put in. Obviously, Bad Rock, Dodgy Rock, coming out of the spirit world and talking to the twins, and then the Korra scene. But the Korra scene felt more like a cliffhanger scene. Felt like we'd done the episode, and it was like this cliffhanger scene. And I didn't mind those. Just 2 little scenes. That was the only incident of it feels like we're cutting away to this because we're continuing the overall plot. Whereas the last few weeks, it seems like it did that more and did that a bit egregiously. I ranted on one of them about an Asami scene that was just there, so Asami had something to say that episode, and stuff like that. I still think there's definitely, it feels like in this season as a whole, there maybe some restructuring would have made things a bit consistent. But zeroing in on this episode, we got time with everything. If you think about each, take Bolin. Bolin's the policeman, yeah.
No, that's Marco.
Marco.
It's like I feel like you get it wrong 100% of the time, and it really should be closer to 50-50.
Yeah. Marco Marco, think about Marco and Asami. Like, plenty of scenes, them that developing their storyline. It is this. Oh, I think it's this. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's put a plan together. This is us speaking and executing the plan. This is the plan. This is us finding out it's not wrong. This is us escaping. These are all beats to do with the same storyline. I feel like when we were doing that the last few weeks, no storyline got as many beats. And I even didn't mind, much probably to everyone's surprise, as much as I sighed and rolled my eyes a little bit when those two kissed. I think part of me went, it does make sense, because I feel like the Asami side of the breakup, as in her breakup with Marco, has never really been dealt with. Like, we've not seen any signs that she's over him. She's not flitted back and forth at all. She got her heart broken and was a bit, oh, well, that's shit. She still fancies him. She sees he's single again. She sees a connection. She kisses him. Like, I didn't actually even mind the love triangle bullshit, even though it only comes an episode after they broke up. And it's like, okay, we're back here, are we? But again, I think it makes sense for Asami's character. I'd have felt differently, I think, if Marco and her had both actively kissed. But Marco's clearly like, oh shit, I don't know what to do. So I thought they played that out quite logically, I thought. So I didn't even mind the love triangle bullshit, as we've affectionately begun to call it.
Yeah, because I think you're right, actually. Because I think it's not just about taking time to like to sort of explore the characters. It's exploring them through their choices, taking the time to, as you say, put them together for a whole day, and then have the moment where she chooses to do that be the moment he's just given an impassioned speech about protecting her company and her, her assets, and like just, doing the right thing by her. Having that be the moment she chooses to kiss him also makes a lot of sense. Whereas if you feel like if this had been the B plot, or even the A plot of an episode with a B plot, you lose real estate, you lose minutes, you lose time to just give it little touches like that make it believable, and we'd be going, it's right, bullshit, they just kissed, isn't it? Like, I feel like if this moment happens in the previous episode, overcrowded, overstuffed, we'd have felt that way. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's exactly that. It's taking time to even forgetting the character element of it, taking the time to sell us on this stuff is good. And yeah, really benefits, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So let's talk about the actual like content of the episode itself, though, in terms of like the major plot, which is obviously the sting itself, and then the conclusion. So it's got this is one again. It actually, another thing that helps this episode is it does really have a sort of 3-act structure. There's a problem, they go on an adventure, they resolve the problem by the end. Like, or don't resolve it, but like the goal of this episode for Mako is to find out who's behind that bombing and these thefts of equipment. And he does, theoretically, by the end of the episode, find that out. Or at least, elements of it. So before we get into the sort of Varric of it all, how did you feel about because this is the first episode in a while that's really had a beginning, middle, and end of its own, which I do also think helps this episode. How do we feel about that plot and how it played out, and the sort of the structure of that?
What, the Bolin of it all, or
the Mako off doing his sting, and like the actual like plot, like of the way that the episode, forgetting the Asami moment or the Varric reveal at the end, the actual
loved it.
active story of the week.
I loved it. I loved its cold open, as it were. I think Captain America Winter Soldier has really ruined boat action scenes. because you just go, I'm like, this feels a bit like the Winter Soldier because it's on a boat. Like, that's it. But just in my mind, I guess.
God,
the
that is
so
such
iconic.
A great scene, though, isn't it? That opening scene of Winter
That's
Soldier.
Amazing. It's amazing. I still maintain it's the old favourite v best debate. I still maintain Civil War is my favourite Captain America film, but I think Winter Soldier might be the best Captain America film.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that's exactly right. Because I think an element, and not to derail us, but I think an element of that is just obviously, in the middle of Captain America 3, we have Avengers 2.5, and while,
which is awesome,
that airport sequence, you take that out, that's still a functional movie, Civil War, and it's still its own movie about specifically him. But having that in, it gives it brownie points because it's such a crazy sequence. And it turns out, it turns out now in hindsight was the Russo's pitch. It was like, this is us doing an Avengers movie. Please let us do an Avengers movie.
Yeah. Let us do an Avengers movie. So I thought it all unfolded brilliant, and I still love this whole Marco v the police plot, and him sort of playing detective. I thought that unfolded beautifully. I was almost surprised he didn't call Varric out there and then. But again, that almost shows you that he should be a detective. He's not got all the evidence yet. Like he says, right. He's very close. So I think his character stuff was great this week. Maybe they could have played up thinking about it. They could have played up that, I like the notion that he was also partly trying to distract himself from Korra, and they did a bit of that, where at first he's like, forget about Korra, and sort of runs away. But, that's if there's time. I think what they did and how they executed it was brilliant. I really did.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased with it as well for a lot of the reasons you just mentioned. I think it also, like, for the first episode, this is the first episode of a couple of weeks where I really enjoyed the action beat too, because obviously we're talking a lot about like the story and also how the story has these nice like character moments. Like you're right, that choice to have Mako actively go, no, I'm not going to be hot-headed about this, almost like as if he's learned from Korra. I'm not going to be hot-headed. I've not got the evidence yet. I can't win this right now. Varric's in a position of power, Also, Asami's not going to be willing to hear it because she's not going to want to hear that Varric's the cause of her woes because he's just saved her. Like, just understanding the human side of it, but also the practical of just like, no, I need evidence first. This is I'm probably right, but I can't prove it yet. The only thing I will say that was a little less wise was like tipping his hand to Varric, because he says to Varric, I'm really close. He's like looking at Varric as he says it. Like, that won't mean anything to Asami. But I think Varric now knows he needs to be careful, and that's probably not a great idea to tip him off to your plans. But I think on the whole, like, it's, all that stuff's really good. But the other thing this episode does really well, I think, is action. I thought the action beat, and there's only really one big action beat in this movie, but it's really good. It's the boat fight followed by the boat chase, the speedboat chase. Maybe is there a fight on the boat? No, they escape and then they're immediately being chased because they're discovered.
Yeah, they escape. But you could argue the opening scene, the boat getting taken, is a bit of an action scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it starts with a little bit of a beat, but like mostly, if we're talking about the action in this episode, we're talking about the chase, which I thought was really interesting, kind of creative. They're on the boat collides with the other, they fight as the two noses of the boats meet, swinging around the other one to make the other one crash. Like, I don't know, there's some good stuff in there that I thought was, look, it's not the most creative thing they've ever done on the show. It's not Aang wrapping himself in metal and making himself a little Iron Man Aang, but, at the same time, I thought it was good. Like, it was really well done. I thought the visually was interesting. I can't recall a fight where like two boats have sort of like collided and the two people are like bending elements at each other on the noses of the boats. Like, that's pretty good. Like, it's pretty unusual also. I thought the action stuff was really good and well done this week. It didn't. So also, I will say, the writing. This is what made the other episodes suffer, in my opinion. This episode was clearly written to have a small scale action beat where it's a boat chase and a bit of a fight. So it didn't feel out of place or like it was lacking. One thing we did note is that the previous two episodes both had plans for bigger action scenes than we got. Because remember, there was going to be a big old fight in the Southern Water Tribe when Korra went to rescue her dad, and it turned into just a couple-person scuffle. There was also going to be a bigger fight when they were getting out of the harbour, and it just turned into the plane thing, which was cool, but like not, you can almost feel the story leaning towards like, well, this is a moment for a really big action beat, and instead we got this kind of small squished down one, and you almost felt it because the story was designed to lead us to a big one, whereas this, it felt like the story was designed to give us just a small action beat. Does that make sense?
For sure. And yeah, for sure. And it works because of it. You know, if you think about that first action scene as well, that's meant to feel mysterious. We're not meant to know who's doing it. We're meant to concentrate on the fact that it's remote bombs, because that comes into play later. Again, the action scene is also embedded into the plot and plays a part of the plot. Also, Dan, I think to say there's only basically, 1.5 action scenes isn't quite doing justice to Bolin's stunts, but, that's up to you.
Yeah. I tell you what,
that star what he deserves.
His wire work is incredible, must be said. Oh, so good. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think on the whole, like the Mako side of this, with the exception of the reveal, we'll talk about the Korra element of it, the Varric element of it, and the implications of all that in a bit. But in terms of the whole episode, I think the general thrust of the episode is really good, and it plays out really well. There's a bunch of opportunity for funny moments and some good character stuff, and I really like the action scene. So shall we move on to Bolin? Do you want to talk about Bolin?
Let's do it, man. Let's Bolin it up.
So we've got an interesting situation with Bolin this week, because obviously mostly the plot is just the background element of this story, which is Bolin now working for Varric as an actor in his movers. We set up that there's some sort of screening occurring. I did make note of they built since film was invented just seemingly weeks ago, they've built a cinema really quickly.
For seemingly like 2-minute movies.
Yeah. 2-minute movies, built a cinema really quickly. I mean, I'll, you know what? I'll go with the old film television logic of we're just seeing moments and the full thing is longer. But he talks about, we'll be back next week. That makes me think it's kind of serialized like television, like maybe they're 30-minute movies or something like that.
You know what? Honestly, I'm okay with them not being longer. Like, the reality is, if you've never had that technology before, you don't know that it's quite short. Like, absolutely, do you know what I mean? Like, they used to put intervals in movies that were 70 minutes long. Like, I think that's fine.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think what's interesting though is they've developed cinema culture quite quickly though. That's what I was like, because I'm looking at it, I'm going, well, they've got a cinema of some sort. Now, they might have converted another building into it. I think, for a second, I thought there was an implication. Maybe it was the the arena converted.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I hadn't thought that.
But I couldn't see where the gaps were, because obviously the way the arena is set up, it's the arena, then there's the big gaps down to the water. I couldn't see any indication they'd covered those up. It didn't look quite as big as the arena when you saw the wide of the crowd. So I don't think it is. But yeah, they've built or converted a building into bigger cinema very quickly, considering film was invented yesterday. But also popcorn. They're all eating popcorn.
Yeah, the popcorn I'll definitely give you.
They've developed cinema culture very quickly.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's adorable. It's a good image, and it relates to my brain immediately. It communicates the idea. Cinema. Yeah, I got it. Cool. Thumbs up. But part of me just going, not sure I'm into that. Like as a just from a logical perspective, it just kind of is a step maybe too far. Slightly breaks the verisimilitude. Do I get points for using that word this week, Chris?
No, I don't know what it means. So
verisimilitude.
If anything, I've
go on. I lose points, do I?
If anything, I feel like you're trying to make me look stupid. I feel inadequate. That's the word I was looking for. Inadequate.
Verisimilitude is sort of the appearance of being real. So, okay. If something has a detail in it that makes it feel more real world, that gives it verisimilitude. If it doesn't need to be real to us, but something that makes the world feel like it works. So they did that a lot in Steven Universe. There was a lot of verisimilitude to Steven Universe, where, even though the world was quite fantastical, all the elements interlinked in a logical way that you go, okay, this world makes sense to me. Whereas, little things like that in Korra slightly break it, just slightly, just a little bit. Because I think mostly the world of Avatar is good at that. Is good at making the world feel lived in and logical and make sense. You know, they clearly put a lot of thought into a lot of things, details of the world. You know, it's not one of those shows where just like every week you're just like, wait, what? Like this makes no sense whatsoever. Just in terms of like the world building, you know, where the things clash or they don't fit together, and you just think, well, wait a minute, if your government works like this, then why does your thing do this? You know, that sort of stuff. Just like these weird little inklings in your head that things don't quite work. So yeah, I think.
Well, like you say, it feels specifically. I think the example in here is the popcorn and them throwing the popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, culturally, that just feels so our world, as opposed to them evolving to that stage quite quickly. Especially when we've never really seen. Although, did they? I don't know. Did they chuck things in the, in the Ember Players episode of Avatar? Were they booing and chucking things there? Because if they were, there's an element of well, it's evolution. Then it's whether it's
you think theatre culture might have become cinema culture. Yeah,
maybe because if you think about it, God, if I thought you were Dan, if you thought you were pretentious with your big word, guacamole-esque or whatever you said, what did you say again?
Similitude, but I'll tell you what, from now on I will be referring to it as guacamole-esque.
Yeah. So, if you thought that was pretentious, strap in, Dan.
Lovely.
Because if you think about it, whenever Shakespeare and the Globe has been described, the culture that was being described at that time is actually very similar to cinema culture. You've got the booing, you've got the throwing stuff, etc. So, arguably, if that was the case in the Ember Players episode, then what we're seeing here, whilst it feels very culturally similar to our world, actually fits within the world of Avatar as well, because it is the natural evolution to what we saw in that episode.
Assuming that we saw that in that episode, because we don't recall the throwing of things.
No, we can't remember. Yeah. But equally, if you were to tell me that was in there, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I literally just can't remember. Although, Dan, everyone knows popcorn's easier in a microwave, and they don't seem to have those yet, so...
Popcorn is easier in a microwave, but it doesn't taste as good. That's just...
No, controversially, we don't have a microwave. I was having this very debate with someone the other day.
I'm sorry, you don't have a microwave?
See, why does this blow people's mind so much?
Sorry, you don't have a microwave. Why do you not have a microwave? What is wrong with you?
Because, well, we lived with Mum and Dad for a bit before we bought for like 6 months, and they don't have one. And I think we just kind of got used to... I've been used to not having one for years because my Mum and Dad don't have one. So it's one of those weird things, and now I occasionally will mention it, and Jess will be like, well, we don't really have space on the worktops, which is a fair point. We've just literally just gotten used to not having one, but I will admit... that is just because we don't have one. That if we had one, we would actually use it more than we think we would.
Yeah,
I
sure.
admit that.
Well, 100%. Yeah. Wow.
Because I a friend the other day, he was like, because I said I thought one of my worst habits was food waste, and they were like, I think that's partly because you don't have a microwave. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they were like, "Well, the other day, I ordered a curry, and it was really late, so they very nicely like chucked in a bunch of extra shit, but I didn't eat it, so I threw it away." And I was like, "Well, I don't really trust the reheating." And they were like, "Yeah, because you don't have a microwave to nuke it. If you had a microwave, you might have kept that and had it the next day, because you'd whack it in the microwave, heat that bad boy up, make sure it's piping hot, Yeah.
Anyway, I would agree. I think these are wise words. That's genuinely blown my mind, Chris. Like I'm not kidding. I'm like flabbergasted.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about the you have a microwave, unless it was just my tendency to overorder and that logic of exactly the logic I've just outlined.
Just someone who I know, for example. Well, not so much overorder, but like I know that you don't like waste, and I know that when if we order pizza, you're always like, well, great, some of that'll go in the fridge and I'll eat it tomorrow. So I just assumed you had a microwave. I never thought about it.
Fucking love cold pizza. That's neither here nor there. Yeah, no, let's.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
sorry, I just realised that while you were talking about the microwave situation, I was solving a Rubik's Cube, and I've solved it, but I realized the clicky sound of that might have been on the microphone. I'm really sorry. I wasn't thinking. I'm a fidgeter. I was in a meeting at work the other day, Chris, and the entire time I was like, I had a pen in my hand and I was just like flicking it around my fingers, just playing with it. Like I wasn't clicking it. It's not a clicky pen, thank God. I've learned never to hold a clicky pen while in any kind of meeting, because I will just because I'm a fidgeter. I don't know if I'm nervous, tick, or whatever it is. But yeah, so sorry to anyone who could just hear me solving a Rubik's Cube, the clicking of the as I turned it then. I tried to do it sort of softly and gently, I think, subconsciously, but like I don't think I did a very good job. I think, yeah, sorry, everyone.
What I also thought the bowling thing was very, very on character. Do you know what I mean? I didn't feel any of it, and especially when, and I'll be honest with you, Dan, I can't remember when. I can't actually remember when Marco asked Bowling for help and he refused, but I believed it, you know. So I thought that scene played out really well. The comedy in it, and him being like, "Well, I asked you for help and you turned me down, so right back at you, buddy." Right. I really liked that. I still maintain that, and I think actually that's the problem with love triangle bullshit. I still maintain, as much as I enjoy a lot of those inter-character battles and stuff, I still maintain this Team Avatar, if we could even, and I don't even think they really are Team Avatar. I'm just using that term broadly because everyone knows who I mean by that. This Team Avatar have not spent enough time together and have not formed enough of a unit for any of their interpersonal shit to really resonate with me as much as some of the other plots do.
Right.
But I did like that this episode. I did enjoy him kind of going, well, no, like I'm not gonna do it. Like, over to you.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting thing because it plays neatly into what he's already going through as well. Anyway, I mean, he seems to be wealthy now. Varric's given him a bunch of money. He's bought like a hot tub for the middle of their shitty little, sort of attic apartment. He's getting adoration thrown at him from all angles. It plays into the idea that he's like a little bit believing his own hype slightly, which is fun. I really enjoy that. The mover itself is really fun. I love again, I've said this before, but I love the idea that, in the world of Avatar, film was invented like last week. And they're already using it for propaganda to get the sympathies for the Southern Water Tribe, although, that's part of Varric's multi-pronged plan to make a shit ton of money off the war, which seems to be what's going on. Acquire companies, make money, get stuff. But I still really love the Nuktuk of the South, the hero of the South, and obviously it's so funny that they haven't cast a waterbender, because there's these great bits where it's like I'll never. This is the one thing, the one subtle joke that I'll never get over is that because they've not cast a waterbender to play Nuktuk, hero of the South, they've got like water bursting in from different sides. It looks like from a hose maybe, or like people dropping buckets of water and stuff to create the waterbending in the film, and you just think, like, wouldn't it have been easier if they'd cast a waterbender, or if they just had a waterbender on set to do it? But no, they go old school film every time, and it always makes me chuckle every time. I also love the animals talking in the world of Nuktuk. That's great. Yes, please. That's really fun. I've not looked into who supplied those voices yet, but I pray it's D. Bradley Barker. Shall I have a look? Actually, I bet it's in the credits. I've got the
go for it.
But yeah, no, I love all the Nuktuk stuff. The thing I wasn't thrilled about, and I'd like your opinion on this, so because I think there's two schools of thought, right? We have the Ginger moment where he kisses her, and I think there's two ways you look at it. Way one is, himbo Bolin, because Nadia always feels like Bolin is like the ultimate like himbo. Heart of gold, not the brightest, but absolutely always heart in the right place. You could look at it from that perspective, and he just does not understand, sort of not acting, but yeah, a little bit like acting. Like he doesn't get that like Ginger expresses interest in him on camera, and can't quite understand that means that she's not into him off camera, because he's not the brightest and film is new and acting is new to him. Or if he was just being a creepy weirdo, because there's a scene where like he kisses her even though Look, it's not in the script. And he's like, but I kind of thought you were into it, which is just nothing but creepy, really. It's I find it hard to justify that. But so is it creepy weirdo behaviour, or do we get away with it under the guise of he's a bit of an idiot and he's dim and he doesn't really understand the signals? He's getting it crossed because of the acting thing. I don't know which it is.
I'll be completely honest. I didn't pick up it wasn't in the script. I assumed it was scripted. Do they specifically state?
Yeah,
it's not that. I'm not saying you're wrong.
I think Ginger stops the scene and is like, "That isn't, you weren't supposed to do that." He's like, "It's not even the script," and he was like, "Oh, I just thought it was in the moment." It's like he's just going along with it. So
in that case, I think it's wrong, but I think I'm not, and I don't know when this was made. I think this kind of thing is obviously naturally trickier now, but I don't see the problem with them explore as long as they loop it round, as long as we have a moment where he goes, "That was fucked up, I was wrong," probably not in so many words, but I shouldn't have done that. Seeing a character, it's uncomfortable as fuck. Of course it's uncomfortable as fuck, but potentially that's the point. Potentially the point is we're seeing someone who believes their own hope, and it's not necessarily if it doesn't loop back around, if we're meant to feel sympathy with him, if it's meant to be sympathetic towards him, then I think that's wrong. But the idea of exploring a character become a dickhead and do the type of things that unfortunately people in that position do, as long as we make it clear that that's wrong, as long as we ideally have apology and redemption, I think that's an interesting idea to explore. And I think actually, it's this really weird thing where people we should be wanting to explore that, but we don't see it explored, because I think it's just one of those issues that in a way is too horrific. Obviously, we see it explored in other ways, but that particular frame of seeing someone we like become that person, I don't think we see that much, because an audience doesn't respond to any kind of, quite rightly and understandably, an audience doesn't respond, and it's why, we're not. That's why we're uncomfortable with it. That's literally the discussion we're having.
Yeah.
An audience is so uncomfortable seeing it that they just won't respond to the other viewpoint. Because if you think about it, maybe this demonstrates the point I'm trying to get at more. If you think about it, we never see that with paedophiles dramas either. With dramas looking at paedophilia, I can't think of a character who, whenever you see paedophiles portrayed, it's kind of they come in as the villain. And I'm not saying we should, but do you know what I mean? I'm saying we never see that explored. And I think the reason we never see that explored is because it's such a horrific, appalling thing that an audience wouldn't respond to it being being portrayed in any way. Do you know what I mean? They wouldn't want to see a character that we like turn into that, because it's so abhorrent and so horrific. But and that's why we don't see it.
But in this
does
case,
that make sense?
But in this case, we have Bolin kisses Ginger. He ad-libs, kisses Ginger. She's clearly disgusted. Varric criticizes him for not following the script, but then Bolin's like, "Oh, but I just thought it'd be, I thought we had a lot of chemistry. It's working." He's like, "Oh, I kind of like the idea." Then he flirts with her off screen, suggesting that she liked the kiss too, which is creepy as hell. And then she leaves, and he seems confused. She says that she likes Nuktuk. Ginger likes Nuktuk, not Bolin. He's like, but Nuktuk is Bolin. Like, he doesn't seem to understand. And I feel like that's them attempting to justify it within the context of this episode. I think their explanation genuinely is Bolin doesn't understand the difference between Ginger, the character, Ginger, the person, or Nuktuk, the character, and Bolin, the person. And I think that's
quite an extreme.
I just think that's potentially a weak excuse. I don't know if I buy that, and I'm not sure they'll come back to it either. And that's why. And I don't recall, if anyone's wondering, well, you've seen this, Dan. I don't 100% recall exactly where this goes. There's one or two details I remember. We'll get to when we get to about the sort of Ginger Bolin plot going forward. But I don't know if they ever come back to this specific moment, this kiss. So there's definitely, I don't think there's redemption beyond the episode sort of almost excusing it by saying Bolin doesn't understand. And I guess my question to you is more, and apologies if I sort of led us down the wrong path where I phrased it, but like, is that an acceptable explanation for his behavior? Or does that, is that abhorrent and puts you off Bolin going forward? Like, I guess it's definitely, it's a tricky one because I'm not. I sort of can understand it. I'm like, yeah, he is just maybe that dim, but there's also part of me that's like, well, I'm still not sure that's an excuse. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's an excuse. It doesn't. I'm not going to hate the character for the next 3 seasons as a result of it, because I don't know how much they thought about it, and it could be as simple as that. But it's definitely not an excuse.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? I don't know. It's just I just thought it was a bit of an uncomfortable and weird moment. And I'm not really sure what they were trying to tell us about Bolin in that moment either. And even here, on the wiki, they've got the picture of Ginger walking away from Bolin, and the caption is, Bolin left in confusion about the difference between Ginger the person and Ginger the character.
Yeah, so that is definitely what they're going for, but I'm not sure it's executed as clear. Although maybe it is, because my interpretation was that it was even in the script potentially, and like there was just confusion there. So maybe they do nail it. I feel like I went to some pretty extreme places in my response. I just want to be categorically clear. I'm not saying we should see those stories. I think it's interesting that we don't ever see those stories. I think it shows that actually there are some places that maybe creators or audiences just feel they can't go. And maybe those stories are out there, and it just so happens I've not seen them. But I think it's a very interesting topic, how, as much as we've got archetypes in some areas, your Breaking Bads, there are some extremes where actually it would appear the audience aren't willing to follow the story too. I just think that's interesting. I'm not saying I don't want to create or see the sympathetic drama about those subjects. I'm just observing.
It's interesting, isn't it, as well? Because I think in the UK we have a real love for these sort of like schlocky, like ITV 3-part dramas about something really like usually grim. I'm not sure there's a culture for that in America. So I imagine some of our American listeners might have been like, what do you mean paedophile dramas? I think that some of our listeners may have been scratching their heads at that. In the UK, we've got a lot of like these sort of like tentpole, like, sort of TV melodramas that occur where it's just like a 3-part one-off series that deals with and there are some good ones that I always remember. My first time I sort of discovered one of these or really enjoyed one of these was there was one. It made me really worry that David Tennant wouldn't be a good Doctor, but there was one called, I think it was called like Secret Smile, years and years ago. It was after David Tennant had been announced to be playing the Doctor, but before he actually took over at the Christmas special. So whatever that was, there was one on ITV called Secret Smile, I think, and it was about an abusive relationship, and it was like, he was horrible in it. Like, he was just the most despicable character, and like, he was so good in it, and I remember really enjoying that one. But like, yeah, in the UK we have this weird. And maybe you do have it in America, and they just don't make it over here. Oh, you know what? I bet you. I think they like kind of, but they're not as cheesy. But maybe it's like the equivalent to like the Lifetime movies. But the UK treats them way more seriously.
Yeah, there's definitely. I don't know much about Lifetime movies, but I'm gonna bet with some confidence there's not a Lifetime paedophilia movie. But maybe I'm wrong.
You know what? They've made so many of those now. I'd put money on the opposite.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, anyway. So that's just a weird cultural thing, I think. But yeah. You're right, though. I don't think audiences would want to see any atonement. It's absolutely not.
No, I just think
it's much more effective from both a dramatic perspective and a cultural perspective to just depict as villainous.
But also, no one wants to see it because that shit is so unforgivable, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's as simple. It's oddly as simple as that. People just don't want to see it, so it's like, well, let's not fucking do that.
Yeah, 100%. I think so. So I'm not so sure about the kiss thing, Bolin. I think I felt icky about that. But you know, not every single thing that happens in every episode is going to be a big old smash hit. So let's talk about the last couple of details.
I love that we had a fairly like an in-depth discussion, where we went to some really, I think interesting areas where we discussed a lot of nuance and we discussed a lot of big ideas that, let's be honest, neither you or I are actually qualified to talk about, and that lack of qualification to talk about it is perfectly summed up by the summary being you saying, I felt icky about it. That's the conclusion we came to. Yeah, feel a bit icky about that.
I felt icky about Bolin's thing, and I don't have an answer because I don't know the episode did enough to justify it. So that's why that's why it's a big question.
It's just the phrasing. Do you know what I mean? Like 10 minutes of like all these big high concept areas, and what it boils down to is you and me going, "Yeah, feel a bit icky about that."
Yeah.
Yep. Made me laugh.
Yep, it's about right. Anyway, so two things. Let's briefly talk about the Unalog thing, and then we should talk about the reveal about Varric and what that means for the plot going forward, and then we'll have a quickly look at the tease at the end of this episode for where we're going with Korra. So, first of all, the Unalog. There's only one or two Unalog scenes this week, but it's basically he comes out of the spirit portal and sees Eska and I want to say Desna. Damn, I'll never remember the second one's name. Oh, Desna. I had it right. Annoying. I threw myself under the bus for a thing I didn't get wrong. That's annoying. And he basically is like, where's the Avatar? I remember how I needed the Avatar last week. Didn't the week before, but needed them that last week. And they are like, oh yeah, well, she was taken by a spirit monster. She's probably dead. And he's annoyed about that. Anything from that of note or interest to you? Because it's quite an because the Korra scene plays as like a tag to tease what's coming next. You know, the one at the end. It's the only other time this episode we step away from Mako, and it's for one scene. And you think it's just there to make the audience go, "Don't worry, we've not forgotten Korra exists." Like, is that why that scene exists?
I just think, we as the audience are never going to believe she's dead. And you know what? I just don't think I don't think that scene is necessary. Like, if we next have Dodgy Rock and Korra interacting, even if their next scene is like literally together, I still wouldn't have gone, oh, the twins didn't say anything then. Or, even if you'd have him go, I was told you were dead. I'd just go, oh, they must have said off screen that they must have thought she'd died. But actually, obviously, of course, does the scene actually not exist for that anyway? The scene exists to show him coming out of the spirit world and have that tease of, did you just come from the spirit world? Never mind about that.
Yeah, because I think it's multi-pronged.
We'll come back to it at a later episode.
I think it's multi-pronged. I think it's a way to assuage, because the kind of the cliffhanger of the previous episode is Korra being chased by Desna and Eska and then getting attacked by that monster, right? So you kind of that the Unalog scene is fairly early in this episode, and I feel a little bit like it's more to assuage the audience and go, we haven't forgotten. We're not dealing with that just yet. That plot is still occurring in the background. But Korra is currently missing in action, which means then you don't worry about, well, what's Korra doing through the rest of the episode? And then obviously it has the benefit of, we clarify that he now knows she's missing, as it were, missing in action. And then, we then have the extra tease if he steps out of the spirit pool. Any thoughts on what that could mean for what his plan is? Because we still don't really know what he's up to. Any ideas? No worries if
no real idea, and I don't think whether I'm not meant to, but I find it weird. Like, I don't know how he's able to enter the spirit world. Like, humans can't do that, right? Like non-Avatar people. Well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's a portal that Korra opened. Presumably, portals.
That's true.
Go places.
Yeah. No real idea, but intrigued, excited to see how it plays out.
Sure. Yes, that makes sense. So yeah, I don't have much to say on that scene myself other than what we just said. So we'll move on. There's the other two things that are left. Let's talk about the Varric thing. So I really like this plot. I like that Varric is the guy, and again, it's like he seems like mildly sinister, but again, you always just get the vibe. They set him up so well with Varric that he's just doing whatever benefits him the most. And he's like, he is truly a master manipulator. Like, he has manipulated a situation where Asami has a company that's making war toys. He's stoked a war in the south. He's come back to Republic City, stoked it further by hiring people to pretend to be Northern Water Tribe, stealing Asami's stuff. So he's double dipping because he's getting money out of the Asami deal where she sells her stock to the Southern Water Tribe because he facilitated that. Then he's getting the stock himself. It's not even getting to the Southern Water Tribe because he's stealing it himself, and he's stealing it under the guise of the Northern Water Tribe to continue to stoke the war.
Yeah, so I agree with all of that interpretation.
It's genius.
But do you not think they potentially, with that last scene and with the music cue and his stare, which, you know, for a character that is usually full of the funny, that last stare where he's like, you know, it's almost James Bond villain-esque, you know, I've brought a holding, you know. Do you not think they slightly go, that... With any other character, that scene is, no, this guy is now the villain, and he's a serious villain. So I agree with your interpretation. I think he's just out to make money.
Yes.
But that last scene doesn't play like that.
No, I feel like they were trying to have their cake and eat it too, because I feel like they're also like, they want the audience to be like, ooh, new villain alert. Like, even though villain would be definitely a strong term for the character we've established with Varric, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, he's literally my favourite character from this show. I love everything about him. I continue to. But yeah, I feel like they wanted that to be more of a twist than it is, so they made him seem more sinister in that moment. Or, you know, maybe he is just that evil now, and that's the deal. But I think even you're not going to be convinced of that, I think, Chris, because, you know, you understand character and storytelling to the point where you're probably like, well, I know enough to know that doesn't really fit with the person we've met so far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's just them trying to make it seem more like immediately harmful. And it is harmful because he's also positioned himself where he owns Asami's company or a controlling share. You know, he has gained from every element of this. It is a masterful plan. Stoke a war, broker a deal, steal the stuff back so you can sell it again, buy the company. Like, he is winning on every front of this. And it also gives new motivation to his movers. He's making money from those, but also they're supporting stoking ill will towards the north, which is allowing him to continue to sell weapons of war. The whole plan is genuinely genius. Like, it is an absolute masterstroke. If you just want to be a dick and make a ton of money and you don't care about other people, this is a genius plan. If you've no moral qualms about doing it, the man's an absolute genius.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love that about that reveal. And I also really enjoyed how Bolin. Sorry, I did a U. I mixed Bolin and Mako for a second. How Mako got to that conclusion. By the way, I like that Mako used evidence and logic and detective skills to determine it. It's not like he overheard someone going, "Well, Varric's hired us to do this." You know, he could have overheard Shady Shin saying Varric's name, right? And that could have been the way he figured it out. But no, he put the evidence together.
I don't know. We've been paid to keep the guy in the Broad busy. Is pretty. I don't think that takes as much detective skill as is being implied there.
No, I'm talking about the bomb stuff. That's how he finds out.
Right. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the moment on the boat where he sort of...
So what I'm saying is he figures out it's Varric. He could have figured out it was Varric there. They could have used Varric's name in that conversation and saved
I'm with you now.
And saved a step. You know, Mako would then not have had to have visited Bolin and figured out the bomb thing. But instead, they don't say Varric's name there. We still don't know who's behind all this. Mako is continuing his investigation, and during that, he visits Bolin on the set of Nuktuk, and he sees the explosions they're using for the movie and asks about them. And this part's a little convenient. The guy is like, and here's the trigger. It's exclusively Varric Industries. Yep, no one could possibly have these but Varric Industries. Look, this is unique, proprietary tech that exists in one place and one place only. Yeah, boy, how? You're not getting one of these anywhere else. not owned by anyone else or used by anyone else. That's specifically us. Like, it's the most laboured point. It's written really clumsily. But in terms of I like Mako putting it together. I like that we have a moment for Mako to do that, rather than we just, have him overhear it or whatever, which would have been way easier from a plot perspective. But I prefer this. Yeah. So that's good stuff. So where are we then with Korra? So episode ends with Korra seemingly back on our old favorite Crescent. Is it Crescent Island? Which is the island Aang went to first speak to Avatar Roku. You know, the island with the temple on it, where if the light hit the statue at the right time, he could talk to a previous incarnation of the Avatar. That appears to be where she is, based on the designs and also the outfits of the guys that find her. They look like the sort of like keepers of that tower. But she doesn't seem to remember who she is. Is the big reveal at the end of this episode. She's like, who's Avatar Korra? She doesn't seem to remember anything. How are we feeling about that? What just in general?
Yeah, it's difficult because, I'm not sure she needed another plot. But I think it's an interesting one. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm intrigued by it. I'm excited by it. Maybe she goes on a spiritual journey to get her memories back. But, fundamentally, it's got to be all in execution, that. Because, like I say, I don't think she needed another plot. But if they execute it well, sweet, I'm in.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's one of those things that really does depend heavily on what they do with it. It's certainly an interesting idea, but I mean, this season has been full of those. It's never been short of interesting ideas. It's what it's been short on is coherent execution sometimes. So yeah, I'm with you. I think it's an interesting premise. I like that they've gone back to a location we've seen before. It just keeps the world consistent. And obviously, like a sacred island like that's like got a temple to a former Avatar is not likely to have changed a lot in the preceding sort of 70 years. So I'm okay with it not having really evolved a lot, because I suspect that I suspect that people will have been looking for evolution the way we got it with Republic City in the south when we visited the Southern Water Tribe. Obviously, that's certainly a lot more than a bunch of huts like it was in sort of Katara and Sokka's younger days. It's evolved a lot into a functional sort of society with like full like buildings and like like government of its own, and that's quite a lot of progress in 70 years. Whereas this doesn't, Crescent Island doesn't seem to have changed a huge amount, but I think that's fine if it's like a sacred temple type place. So yeah, I'm excited about where that's going. Obviously, we got a two-parter coming up next called Beginnings, which I think is fair to assume it's going to deal heavily with Korra's situation.
Which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, anything else you want to add about this episode in particular? I mean, I think mostly I liked it. It's pretty good. It's nice to have focus, and we'll see where it goes. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Chris.
No, I'm good. Shall we trim it up?
I'm gonna give you some trivia. So I've added some trivia of my own this week, Chris, because this is specifically Rewind Review based trivia. Shady Shin, I realised this week, is voiced by none other than Fisher Stevens. Now, if you're thinking, that name sounds familiar, but I can't place it, I'll say he is the gentleman from Short Circuit that wore brown face and did an Indian accent. It's that guy. It's the number Johnny 5 guy. It's the Apu of the Short Circuit world.
Yeah. See our episodes on Short Circuits 1 and 2 for our views on that.
Yeah. I look. But the fact that the guy that voiced Benjamin is in Korra, even in this very small role, is fun for me. I grew up on that movie. We love that movie. I've talked about it. I have a lot of fondness for Fisher Stevens. Obviously, he had a small stint in Friends as well. Apparently, he's also in Succession. I don't recall him. Hugo Baker in HBO's Succession. Huh.
Yeah, he's like a big. I think if it's the guy I'm thinking of, he's quite a big part of Succession.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's done tons of stuff. He's done Wes Anderson movies. He's done, he's done, what do you call it? Coen Brothers movies. He's a beloved actor, but I'll never not think of him as Ben Javeri from the Short Circuit films, because that's what I grew up watching, those movies. So yeah, but if you want to hear about our thoughts on that, I love it because they changed Ben Javeri's surname between Short Circuit 1 and Short Circuit 2. So in Fisher Stevens' Wikipedia page, he's the portrayal of Ben in Short Circuit. In Short Circuit 2, they didn't bother giving. They didn't give the surname. That's funny. So yeah, I just thought that was fun, and that is very specific to us. Other trivia. Let's see. The episode is the first of Legend of Korra not to focus on Korra. Obviously, that is so instead, keep making Mako the main protagonist. The episode marks the first time Tenzin and his family have not appeared so far in Book 2. The character in the play. In the movie, the Nuktuk of the South movie, he's literally seems to be named Evil Unalog. And he apparently bears a resemblance to the actor that played Ozai in The Boy in the Iceberg. He had the big eyebrows and the sort of swishy evil villain eyebrows and the big collar and stuff. And I think that is the idea, is that the theatre stuff has played into the movie stuff in terms of how they characterize and visualize villains. So I think that's fun. In the original, I don't know what. See, I question the choice to put this in the trivia, but I want to read it out because in fact, sometimes I don't think about the trivia. I just think about the person who wrote the trivia. Does that make sense? In the original storyboard for the scene with Bolin in the hot tub, he was shirtless. I'm not going to comment.
Thank you very much, trivia person.
I'm not going to comment on that person. I'm just going to leave that there. Let that speak for itself. If you are that person, get in touch. I have questions. I
think it's great. I've got so many. How do they know? Why did they think it was worth commenting?
Yeah, I'm going to assume that the storyboard was released at some point, maybe as part of some sort of promotional material, as like a DVD extra or something, maybe on the Blu-ray or something. But like, why that was needed to be in the trivia, I'm not sure. But yeah. I guess it's interesting that they changed that, maybe, sort of. I guess someone somewhere went, maybe you should wear like a swimsuit, like a swim shirt thing. Yeah, if it's the style of the time, sure. I don't think that's necessarily as interesting as it seems on the surface, but yeah. The moment where Mako eavesdrops on Shady Shin and Viper talking about the former's date prior to discussing their ulterior motives was added after the final animatic. So the original animatic has them saying that they're keeping Mako and Asami busy, but when they got to it after the final animatic, they added the sort of comedic beat that comes before it where they're talking about the date.
Cool.
Which I think is again a sign of the episode just having a bit of room to breathe.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely it is. And as we've already said, the episode really benefits because of it.
Yeah, for sure. The creators experienced some resistance from the network around the fact that Korra was not the main character of this particular episode's story. The creators assuaged them by pointing out that Korra is in the episode's final scene. Now, I found that one quite... maybe ironic is the wrong word, but is this not the same network that were nervous about doing the show in general because they had a female protagonist? A bit fucking rich now to be like, oh, she's not in the show. Like, isn't that what you wanted?
They don't. There's a running theme, isn't there, particularly with children's animation of networks just not having faith in the children.
Yes.
Like, do you know what I mean? That note feels like, well, the show's called Korra, so won't kids be confused? Probably not. Like, it's fine.
No, she's not there this week. She's busy. Like, fine. There's no child on this planet that's going to be questioning that. None. Yeah. There might be a child that says, "Oh, I wish Korra had been in it." Maybe there's a kid out there that likes Korra is their favourite character, so they go, "Oh, I'd prefer she." But they're not going to be confused, like, "Oh no, I've turned on the wrong show." It's called Korra, but there's no Korra. Strange. So yeah, now that means, Chris, it is time for you and everyone turn up your podcast, turn up your headphones. It's time, Chris, for you to introduce our segment, feedback from last series.
Bow, 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 bow. Bow, 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 bow. Wow. Wow. Bum, bum, bum. Mm-hmm. Bum, 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 bum.
Quite a sensual one this week.
You gave some feedback and you didn't get a response. Don't worry about it, baby. Good things come to those who wait. Bum, 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 bum. Dan responds to feedback that we didn't respond to previously because we very rarely check the comments. Oh, yeah. There you go.
I check the comments all the time. I just don't respond to them.
I know.
Well, that was great. That was great. Feedback from last series. We're here. Now, that was perfect, Chris, because this is actually a response to yourself. So last year, when we talked about...
Okay.
No, sorry. I've realised I've connected two things I shouldn't have there. Sorry. That was an appropriate one because you kind of went romantic with that one, Chris. And this is on the subject of love triangle bullshit. That's what I should have said.
Okay, right.
But it is specifically in response to yourself. Because you said...
I genuinely found myself thinking, I don't remember commenting. That was honestly where my mind went.
Sorry, I didn't phrase that very well. But yeah, so this one is that your theme tune was appropriate because we're on the subject of love triangle bullshit. Now, last year, you said, the thing with love triangle bullshit is you don't know anyone in your life that's ever experienced love triangle bullshit. You're not sure how common it is. Do you recall this? Now, you didn't say it categorically doesn't happen. You were just sort of saying, like, you're not sure if this is a real thing that goes on a lot because you hadn't had a lot of experience with it in your own life. We had so much feedback, Chris.
Oh, God.
I
really hope it wasn't people, oh, God, sharing their pain. And, oh, God, I'm sorry if people have experienced it and were hurt by it.
It was like 99.9% all good-natured stuff, but it was a lot of people saying, basically, in one of the episodes, someone asked if love triangles are real. This is from Spyro Smithy. I think this one's from our Discord, or if anyone has ever experienced them. I can say I have... I have secondhand, they do in fact happen in real life. We got Punkfish who said, haha, you asked if anyone has seriously ever lived through some love triangle bullshit because of Chris's theory. And as an openly and actively polyamorous person, yes, I have, which I thought was a great comment. We got tons. We got loads of these. I found two and then like ran out of time to find more, but I know there are at least 4 or 5 just amongst the YouTube comments. So, yeah, lots of people, giving information about that they have experienced that. So I don't know if you wanted an opportunity to respond to the feedback based on your previous theory that like you didn't see a lot of those in real life.
I will respond. This is me responding.
Okay.
Bum, 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 bum. Oh yeah. Listen, everyone. I apologize if you felt that. Bum, 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 bum. That my theories about love triangle bullshit not happening were ruling out experiences you'd had. I'd never mean to do that to you, my darlings. I genuinely, I realize now I wanted to make quite a sincere apology, and I've gone down this route, and it's naturally appearing less sincere. But I'm gonna stop doing that. But I can't do a sincere apology in a sexy theme.
I was literally, as you were doing it, I was trying to work out what the notes you were doing so I could do that. Like I was trying to find the bump, but I couldn't quite work it out. So all I ended up with was I think I found the bit of from a Garfunkel and Oates song, which is.
Look, it sucks to hear that there is this bullshit out there, and it especially sucks because our listeners are fucking brilliant. I love our listeners. I
don't think necessarily anyone's really talking about it as if it's like necessarily like you know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I don't think anyone's arguing with me. I think they're just going, yes, that shit's happened to me.
No, I understand, but I'm not even sure necessarily these experiences are considered negative by our listeners. I mean, no one seemed particularly like they were having reliving trauma or anything. Yeah. So I think for some people they're just experiences they've had that inform have informed them, and they wouldn't not have them for that reason.
Yeah, but any form of the phrase is love triangle bullshit. Any listener saying they've had any version of bullshit, I'm like, shit, sorry to hear that. Like I wouldn't wish that on you. So yeah, fair enough. It definitely is a thing, and maybe that's why so much media deals with it. So yeah, hopefully they can pull something from that, and hopefully no one's going through that bullshit now. And if you are, just keep powering through. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and usually it's something else entirely. Do you know what I mean? Like, usually any situation that gets that complicated, hopefully there's a situation round the corner, some ways down the road that isn't in any way complicated. I know personally, despite not having dealt with love triangle bullshit, I've certainly dealt with on again, off again bullshit, and the ultimate resolution of that for both parties, for all parties, was someone else ways down the road. So just keep on pushing down the road, and if you were worried at any point that there's been so much love triangle bullshit, you're worried that you'll never feel sexy again, well, hopefully the theme tune to this segment proved that wrong. So there you go.
Amazing. Yes, thank you, Chris. That was a good response. So with that out of the way, and it's interesting because I think that's the first time that we've had feedback that was specific to one of us, because generally speaking, it's something we both talked about. So we've been able to. But yeah, that was very specifically something you'd said, that because I had no horse in that race, because I admit I was in your shoes, but I assumed that. I assumed someone somewhere must have, like, it's a big old planet, a lot of people. So yeah, I figured it was not completely unheard of. But I think to be fair though, I don't think these responses negate your theory though that it's maybe not very common. It's hard to know that element of it. A handful of people obviously experiencing it doesn't disprove the theory that maybe it's not. It's something that's that could happen to people, but it's maybe not something most people have had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could be less than half.
Well, that it's potentially disproportionate to the amount of times it appears on television.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah, because it seems to happen in every other TV show. So yeah, agreed. Anyway, that's everything. Thank you all for listening. You can get us all the usual places. If you want to hear next week's episode, Beginnings Part 1, right now, guess what? Chris?
What, Dan?
They can go over to the Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, they can get access to episodes of this podcast 1 week earlier on a special RSS feed that they can put into their podcast app of choice. And while they're there, they'll also get bonus content, Chris. Bonus content. Every month on the 1st, we put up bonus stuff. It's great.
What a spectacular turn of events.
I know. And at the moment, we're in the middle. I say the middle. We're just cracking on with Nothing But Lyrics, which is our podcast where we make fun of or try to analyse the lyrics of a song. We recently actually broke down and worked out the meaning of the lyrics from I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys, which have previously been dubbed, illogical, like unreadable, like you just can't figure them out, like they contradict each other. We worked it out. We did it. We cracked it. We cracked the code. They do make sense. We figured it out. So have a listen if you want to hear us backwards engineer the meaning of that song. It's quite a fun time.
It's very. I felt like as you were saying that, you realised how specific it was. So join us for that if you're interested in backwards engineering the meaning of "I Want It That Way" by the Backstreet Boys.
It's a good time. I had a really good time. I had a really good time doing it.
Hey, I had a great time.
So if you're interested in that sort of thing, feel free. Also, if you're a member of the Patreon, again, for as little as $1 a month, you get access to our Discord, where some of the feedback that we get comes from. So you can leave comments there and stuff. But of course, maybe, Chris, you don't want to support us financially because you can't afford to, or you just don't think we're worth money, which is absolutely fair. I question it every time I see the money coming from the Patreon. I go, these people know what they're paying for, right? It's great. No, we very much appreciate it. We finally started to break even. Was it last year before? And it's been nice to not have to pay to do this hobby. Beyond the initial investment of the microphones, and then my time for editing them. But the server space. running like having the website like server, the cost of the server space for the individual episodes, and keeping up the entire back catalogue costs money, because obviously it's not just this, it's 10 years worth of MBS, Fringe Observers, all that stuff, Steven University. It's not free, so that really helps. So thank you everyone who's continuing to support us that way. But if you don't want to do it financially, if you don't want to help us and financially keep the lights on, so to speak, well, great. There are other ways you can do it. You can support us by heading over to your podcast app of choice and liking, and subscribing to it there. You can give us a little review depending on how they do it. They all have different systems, but basically any review or interaction you do with our podcast on that app tells that app's algorithm you enjoyed it and makes it more likely to share it with others. Of course, you could just go skip the middleman, do that yourself. Tell a friend. You got a friend who's big into Korra or Avatar? Send them our way. Why not? Or a friend that's into Steven Universe. We got a podcast about that. Or Fringe. Or just TV in general. They can send them over to Nothing But Static.
Or the Backstreet Boys.
Oh, the Backstreet Boys. That's paywalled. So you'd have not only would you have to send them our way, you have to tell them to pay as little as $1 a month to get access to it.
It's a big ask. It's a big
ask. But yeah, no, I grateful for anyone spreading the word and helping that way, and sharing with friends and stuff. Of course, other ways you can support us is just by getting up to the YouTube channel and subscribing and liking there, very much like with the podcast. Now, but if you've got feedback for us, so you've just got something you want to say based on what was said this episode, you've got a response to maybe anything that we've said, you're welcome to go over to the emails, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk, or you can head over to the Discord if you've joined through the Patreon, or if you head over to youtube.com/nothingbutstatic.uk, find the video version of this very podcast. When I say video version, I use that term loosely. It's just still images. You can put a comment down on the YouTube post of this that will allow you to send feedback directly to us on the specific episode that your comment might be relevant to. We used to have Twitter. If you've got on our Twitter addresses from previous episodes, just be aware we've stopped using those. Twitter died when an absolute fucking moron owned it. Paid way too much for it and has tanked its value since. Good work, you stable genius. So yeah, we don't use Twitter anymore because it's mostly just knobheads with blue ticks saying stupid things and getting pushed to the top because algorithm and what kind of idiot pays for Twitter. Anyway, sorry, that was a small little rant about Twitter. Yes, that's all that stuff. Of course, the other thing you can do, go support Raphodraws, who supplies the artwork at the beginning of this episode. The artwork on the podcast, which is the Appa at Sunset. That's Raphodraws, RAPHODRAWS, who does all sorts of cool art. Get it on Instagram.com/Raphodraws. There's a Tumblr, there's a Twitter, there's a YouTube. And if you go to launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws, you can get access to the Redbubble account where some of Rapho's excellent art is on things that you can buy and you can support an artist. Go do that, Rapho. Thumbs up. Awesome person.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
So go do that. Yeah. So that is everything for this week. Thank you all very much for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next week when we sit down to review The Beginnings, Part 1.